Welcome back to Enchanted Learning. It's me Benasar Khalid. So, in this class we are discussing about the amendment of Indian Constitution. In the last class also we were discussing the same topic, and today we are discussing the remaining portions. So, make use of this class as it is very important for almost all the upcoming exams, whether it is prelims or mains. So, first we were discussing the amendments up to 52nd Amendment Act. Now we are discussing about the 61st Amendment Act. So what do you know about the 61st Amendment Act? Let's discuss those. So listen here. First one, 61st Amendment Act of 1989. So first 61st Amendment Act was passed on 1989. The 61st, as per the 61st Amendment Act of 1989, the voting age of the citizens were reduced from 21 to 18 years. So, as per the 61st Amendment Act of 1989, voting age was reduced from 21 to 18 years, and the PM at that time, at the amendment of that particular act, was Rajiv Gandhi. So, first one, 61st Amendment Act of 1989. Here, what was the amendment made? That is, the voting age of citizens were reduced from 21 to 18 years, and the PM at that time was Rajiv Gandhi. The next one, 65th Amendment Act of 1990. Next one is 65th Amendment Act of 1990. Here, provision for National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes were formed. So, as per the 65th Amendment Act of 1990, provision for National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes were formed. Then 69th Amendment Act of 1991. It is 69th Amendment Act of 1991. As per this act, Delhi was made as a national capital territory of India. So, as per the 69th Amendment Act of 1999, Delhi was made as a national capital territory of India. So, what are the main amendments? That is 61st Amendment Act of 1989. As per this Amendment Act, the voting age of citizens were reduced from 21 to 18 years, and the PM at that period was Rajiv Gandhi. And as the 65th Amendment Act of 1990, the provision for National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes were introduced, and the 69th Amendment Act of 1991, where Delhi was made as a national capital territory of India. So, have you understood the three amendments? That is 61, 65th and 69. 61st Amendment Act is 1989, and 65th Amendment Act 1990, and the 69th Amendment Act is 1991. And the most important one is the 61st Amendment Act and also the 65th Amendment Act. So, next, moving to the next one. So, now next one is 71st Amendment Act of 1991. As per the 71st Amendment Act of 1991, Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali were given official status. These Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali languages were given official status as per the 71st Amendment Act of 1991. And also, next point is 8th schedule was were included in the Constitution as per the 71st Amendment Act of 1991. So, with regard to the 71st Amendment Act of 1991, Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali languages were given official status, and they were included in the 8th schedule of Indian Constitution. So, Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali were introduced in the 8th schedule in Indian Constitution. That is as per the 71st Amendment Act of 1991. The next one is 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. It's a very important Amendment Act. So, 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. As per this Act, Panchayati Raj Institutions were included in Indian Constitution. Provisions for Panchayati Raj Institutions were included in Indian Constitution as per the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992, and 11th Schedule was included in Indian Constitution as per the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. So, here Panchayati Raj Institutions were included where Indian Constitution, or provisions for Panchayati Raj Institutions were included in the 73rd Amendment of 1992. Hence, this Act is known as Panchayati Raj Act. So, this Act is known as Panchayati Raj Act. And here, three-tier model of Panchayat system was introduced. So, here, as per the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992, Panchayat institutions the provisions for Panchayat institutions were introduced in Indian Constitution, included in Indian Constitution, and a three-tier model of Panchayat was introduced. And here, reservation of seats for SC/STs in proportion to their population, and the reservation of seats, that is one-third reservation of seats for women were granted. So the reservation of seats for SC/STs in proportion to their population and one-third reservation of seats for women were granted as per the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992 in Panchayati Raj Institutions. So this is an important act. The 73rd Amendment of 1992 is known as the Panchayati Raj Act. That is, the provisions for Panchayati institutions were provided or were included in Indian Constitution as per the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992, and 11th Schedule was introduced in Constitution as per 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. And here, three-tier system or mode of Panchayat was introduced, and here reservation of seats for SC/STs were provided in proportion to their population, and also one-third reservation of seats for women were also granted. That's all about 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. It is also known as the Panchayati Raj Act. Have you got it? Next one is 74th Amendment Act of 1992. As per the 74th Amendment Act of 1992, 12th Schedule was added to the Indian Constitution. So 12th Schedule was included in the Constitution as per the 74th Amendment Act of 1992. And here, Nagarapalika and Municipal Acts were also known as the 74th Amendment Act of 1992. Nagarapalika and Municipal Act were also known as 74th Amendment Act of 1992. And the Prime Minister at that time was P.V. Narasimha Rao and the President was Shankardeya Sharma. So, Nagarapalika and Municipal Act was introduced during the period of Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and President Shankardeya Sharma. So, note these points. Next, move to the next amendment. 86th Amendment Act of 2002, which is a very important Amendment Act. As per the Amendment Act of 86, Amendment Act of 2002, first point you have to look at is elementary education was considered as a fundamental right. So that is, elementary education was considered as a fundamental right. The elementary education was made as a fundamental right, and a new article, that is Article 21A, was added to Indian Constitution. So, elementary education was considered as a fundamental right as per the 86th Amendment Act of 2002, and here a new article, this Article 21A was introduced, and this article, as per this article, the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children from age 6 to 14 years. That is, the state shall provide free and compulsory education for children from 6 to 14 years. So, that is what discussed in 86th Amendment Act 2002. So, as per the 86th Amendment Act of 2002, elementary education was made as a fundamental right, and a new article, this Article 21A, was added to Indian Constitution. As per this article, the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children up to between 6 to 14 years. That is what mentioned in 86th Amendment Act of 2002, and this is very important amendment. So next one is 91st Amendment Act of 2003. As per the 91st Amendment Act of 2003, the provisions were provided for limiting the size of Council of Ministers in central and state. So size of the Council of Ministers were limited in central and state as per the 91st Amendment Act of 2003, and that is to debar the defectors holding public positions, and also to strengthen anti-defection law. So this Council of Ministers size and central and state were limited, that is to strengthen the anti-defection law, to debar the defectors holding public positions, and also to strengthen the anti-defection law. That is what mentioned 91st Amendment Act of 2003. That is, it provides the provisions for limiting the size of Council of Ministers in central and state, that is to strengthen the anti-defection law. That is all about 91st Amendment Act of 2003. So, in this class, we are discussing a few amendments, and one of the most important amendments were also discussed in this class. So, please remember those points and make this use this class as a revision class. So, next class we will be continuing the amendments, and the remaining amendments will be taken on that class. If this class was useful, please subscribe my channel and keep watching. Till then, bye from me. Thank you.